Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar on securing and modernizing banking system, a smarter way to cloud. We are excited to take you how financial institutions are navigating compliance challenges while boosting agility and innovations. A little disclaimer for our viewers today and participants. Just give it a second to go through. And I'll go to our speakers, introducing our speakers. Please welcome our first speaker today, Steve Fusco, Head, Financial Services Industry, VCF Division at Broadcom. Steve is a financial services veteran with over 28 years in the field, along with a technology analyst. He has held senior leadership roles at TD Emirates and Fidelity Investments, including CIO, Senior Vice President of Technology at Fidelity PE. Steve brings industry insights into how financial institutions can modernize securely and drive innovation in today's evolving landscape. Welcoming our second speakers today, Mark is an FSI Strategy Director for APJ in Broadcom's CTO's advisory team. With over 20 years of experience, Mark has led initiatives in architecturing, mobile banking, security, and cloud modernization, data center consolidation for premier banking sector. His career spans senior roles at Barclays, Lloyds Banking Group, KPMG, and Fujitsu. I would also like to inform that we want to make this webinar as interactive as possible, so ask away all your questions in the Q&A tab. We have Nick supporting question and answers. Your feedback is important, hence please do take time to take the polls and the survey at the end of the webinar. Without much delay, let's start and explore. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Masaki. So I think we can probably go through the agenda. Thank you. And welcome, everyone. We have a lot to share today, so we're going to get right to it. This slide is really a culmination of probably 50 customer meetings. And I personally try to bring the customer perspective to VMware to understand how financial services executives are looking at our technology and what they need from us. So when you look at the challenges that they're having right now, they say, there's a lot of complexity in our systems. They cost. There's a substantial cost to having such complex systems. And risk is paramount in our industry. So please be aware of that, as we're talking to them. Now, the business need, this is, when I say business need, this is the actual business that's working with IT and what they're asking for. And what they're saying is, hey, IT, we need you to go faster. We need to build applications more quickly, more securely. So we need that velocity and flexibility. As our customers are asking for new applications, real-time applications, we need to be able to respond and to be able to compete in the industry. But top of mind, as always, is security, resiliency, regulatory requirements, and what's happening in FSI. There are a lot of places where these companies are interacting with fintechs and others, so they have to be even more prepared for regulation. And it's a highly regulated industry, as you know. So let's go to the next slide and talk about what our customers are. And this is actually a list from one of the top financial services companies in the world. We didn't create this slide. This is from them. We put the graphics on it, but directly from them. And you could see there in red on the FSI customer business objectives, protect the firm and our customers. That is job number one. And they want to deliver that best-in-class products and so forth. But at the end of the day, if they get compromised in any way or non-compliant, it's significant fines. You could lose your license. It's pretty serious stuff. I'm going to talk more about that later. But these are just some of the things that they're looking for. I'm going to go down to the bottom of the page because I'm not going to read this to you, but there's the concept of cost reduction and run versus change. In order to take advantage of the tools like AI, they need to be able to find savings. And we're going to go through hopefully where they're going to be able to find some of that. The concept of run the bank versus change the bank is a relatively new one. And run the bank really just means keeping the lights on. What does it take for them to keep the lights on every day? They've got to manage these systems. They have legacy systems that have been there maybe 20, 30 years in some cases, and they have the talent there to be able to run them. Most of these organizations tend to be very siloed because they were built over a long period of time. And the governance process can be very difficult to get new things into the environment. It's very complex. There's a lot of compliance. And so it's really difficult for them to find ways to see those savings. And that's an area where we can help. On the change the bank side, they have 20 to 30% of their budgets available to be able to build those new applications. And especially with what's going on in AI today, it's getting more and more difficult. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that now. But first, I think we need to understand what's happening in terms of cloud. Now, we saw a lot of financial services companies going to the cloud, and we're seeing them going to public cloud rather, and we're seeing them come back to private. They're really in no rush to put new workloads in the public cloud, mostly for compliance reasons that we're going to talk about here today, but it's also cost. So they're being really selective about those. And as you could see, the cost or spend rather is declining. 87% of compute power is on premise. And most of that is because it's a highly regulated industry. They wanted to put things out in the cloud. Turned out that wasn't such a great idea. There are use cases certainly for public cloud, but private cloud is where they're going, and which is great for us. So when you look at the regulatory landscape, right, it's very complex. So they have local, and Mark's going to talk a little bit about, the intricacies of each of these regions, but you have global regulatory requirements, you have local regulatory requirements, and it gets very complicated. So they need something that's going to help simplify all of this complexity. And given the attack surface that these companies have today, they really need to reduce that risk as much as possible. I'm going to go into more of this, but Mark, any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So yeah, what stands out for me really is the challenge we've highlighted against Singapore. So balancing innovation and controls, because when it comes to technology and compliance, this is probably the fundamental problem we're all trying to solve. And VCF really is a key enabler here, which we'll go into later. And so we see some common themes across all jurisdictions, including APJ. And so firstly, as we've highlighted on the slide, there's a common agenda across operational resilience and critical infrastructure regulations. And so with operational resilience generally being led by financial services regulators and critical infrastructure acts, usually driven by a cross-industry body that includes FSI alongside utilities and others. But what's interesting is both have a focus on third-party supply chain risk, and in particular, the need to manage supplier concentration risk. So from a cloud strategy perspective, we really need to think about the increasing reliance on IaaS and SaaS services, which are often all hosted on a small number of public cloud providers. And so moving down the list, the cybersecurity and incident reporting, obviously cyber is a really big one that underpins a lot of the resilience agenda. And it's now quite consistent to see across geos that there's a compulsory incident and data breach reporting requirement to a national body, such as, say, an information commissioner. The other aspect that we see is data privacy. It's pervasive too. So many jurisdictions adopting the EU-style GDPR regulations, and localization and data sovereignty is also increasingly prevalent. And so with unpredictable geopolitics, I think we can expect an increasing focus here. And then from a sustainability perspective, organizations are being mandated to report their carbon footprint. And so, a quick reminder, VCF has a big role to play in terms of optimizing data center efficiency. And finally, there are emerging AI guardrails and regulatory discussions around potential future compliance and acts are ongoing. And we'll cover this briefly when we explore some of the VCF advancements later in the webinar. But firstly, we've done some research in terms of the themes. It would be very interesting to hear from the attendees. What have you seen, and what are you working on in your organisation today? So, if we could start the poll, please, Basaki. We're interested to hear which of the identified themes you or your organisation are most focused on today.
The poll is up. I would request people to get going.
Okay. Do we have a time limit on the poll?
We can keep it for 10 seconds and let people in.
Yeah, cool. All right. All right. So I will move on. And it's back to you, Steve, on this one.
So our customers expect a lot from us. If they already own our products, they understand how important our products are to being compliant. And it's not a matter of governance at this point. There's the poll popping up: cybersecurity incident reporting at 100%. Operational resilience.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's close that up. So the idea behind this slide is really it's a pretty simple one, right? That VCF is going to help. The technology is going to help with compliance. Policies can only do so much. Governance can only do so much, but they need the systems that are going to make sure and ensure that they are in fact compliant in every way. And one of the things I'll mention is you may or may not know that the penalties are pretty severe for non-compliance. So this is something that they all need to take very, very seriously. And by the way, we were on a call with a bank about 2 hours ago that was going through an audit, a real-time audit. So we just had this discussion with a large bank in Singapore, and this really resonated with them. So with that, we can move on.
Okay, so in terms of when we think about how those regulations that impact or apply to technology, we've done a bit of research, and there really is a really vast landscape to navigate across our region, and alongside that, an equally long list of global compliance frameworks. And so the takeaway here really is that this is constantly evolving. So, always acts and standards are in consultation, and there's ongoing updates to existing standards. And so what we really need is technology that provides the flexibility to adapt. And that's what we're going to explore very shortly with VCF. And you can see there that NIST CSF is highlighted at the bottom of the slide. And the reason for that is that we needed to choose across all of this list of standards a common global language when discussing VCF in the context of compliance. And so NIST CSF provides a nice simple structure to frame the conversation. So without further ado, time to explore how VCF provides that flexible technology platform to respond to these regulations, and in doing so, keep your services up and running and data secure. But before we do, just a quick intro into the NIST cybersecurity framework for those that are not familiar. So we have 6 functions now in NIST. So identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, and govern. And it's useful. It allows us to think holistically about resilience and security, and to draw connections between technology capabilities and security or resilience. So hopefully for all of you on the call, it will be an easy to understand framework you can relate to, may have used, as we explore and dive quite deep actually into how VCF can be used in response to regulatory demands. So first up, the identity function. So this is all about understanding what you have to protect. So business function or data, where it is, and which underlying technology it relies upon. And so it can't be overstated how important it is to set up any cloud or platform with strong asset management and tagging. It really is a solid foundation from which so much else is dependent. So for example, in VCF, policy-based governance, and more generally, business impact assessments during incident response. How do you prioritize zero-day responses or security evaluation results? You name it. There's so much that works best with a comprehensive tagging. And VCF has many capabilities in the asset management space to automate and reduce effort. For example, virtual asset discovery and management, we use flow analysis and discovery of services on VMs. We can do two-way integrations with broader ITSM tools like ServiceNow. And with app discovery, we're not just relying on static data from a CMDB, we're continuously discovering new application dependencies and cohesion, and can actually help feed that back into the CMDB with either direct updates or workflows, so that we're not just storing really useful information within the VCF inventory. It's available to your broader organization. Additionally, stay on that page. Additionally, the VCF operations flow engine can identify and configure baseline network policies that can then be used to detect anomalies, either through misconfig or deliberate attempts to exfiltrate data. VCF also, in the operations plane, can discover sensitive data in transit and trigger appropriate workflows. Obviously that's important. We can also build out dynamic app dependency dashboards or service maps for visibility of health of infrastructure that makes up a given application. And these are valuable insights, not just operationally, but also for when we need to understand the current state as part of transformation initiatives such as data center migrations, cloud migration, and app modernization. And as for all compliance initiatives, they are continuous, so with ongoing checks and improvements rather than a one-off exercise. And NIST has a very simple tier levels to drive improvement. They are, partial, risk-informed, repeatable, and adaptive. So level 4 being adaptive. And to reach that level, we need to be forward-thinking in terms of what's coming next from a threat perspective and what's changing in terms of technological advancements that can help. And so in the improvement subcategory, first off, we really recommend keeping across the VCF product roadmap and announcements. We are investing a significant amount of R&D into VCF security and resilience that you can benefit from. And as a priority improvement for those that have not already, we encourage you to import your VMware environments into VCF lifecycle management, not just for the automations and security patches quickly deployed and vulnerabilities removed, but also because it sets you up on a path to take advantage of a lot more in support of security and compliance obligations as we evolve the platform. And finally, on this function, don't forget we have VMware validated solutions, which are a set of design patterns, often with accompanying automations inside VCF to assist deployment, many of which have a security or resilience improvement outcome. And throughout this particular segment, you'll see many URLs. Don't worry about writing them down. We will send a list out after the webinar for you to go and explore further. So moving on to protect. So in essence, and this is a very, probably the most busy area for VCF, it's all about architecting and building the environment for security and availability. So there's a lot to talk about. So I'll just call out a few key areas. Firstly, we can design VCF with a variety of high availability topologies. Key capabilities include traffic distribution with the industry-leading distributed load balancer, RV, infrastructure tier replication, synchronous or asynchronous, and we can also handle resilience for modern apps through service mesh. Obviously, key recommendation, follow platform hardening guides to meet compliance baselines, and we have plenty of guidance on GitHub for you there. And there are also plenty of automations in VCF to assist you from a hardening perspective. But again, number one recommendation here is, important to VCF, reiterating that the more we automate from a security and operations perspective, the better our security posture. And so next up, there have been many data protection improvements to vSAN with the release of vSAN Extended Storage Architecture, or vSAN ESA. So namely, we have improved native snapshots with reduced stun times and immutable snapshot replication in support of ransomware recovery, which we'll discuss later when we go on to respond and recover. So there's a lot to unpack with vSAN ESA, so really encourage you to find out more in that space. We can't go through too much detail in the short time that we have. But also, from a storage point of view, there is a very granular storage-based policy management that we can apply. And that means that we can actually conserve storage by providing targeted resilience where it's needed. And that's just something to think about. It aligns nicely to the tagging we spoke about earlier on in the identify function. And then something that I'm really excited about is the new network segmentation, evaluation, and scoring that we can do with vDefend. And so this provides a continuous evaluation and scoring of the segmentation posture of your environment. In a similar manner to what you may have seen with EDR and next-gen AV tools for endpoint security, you can now do this for network segmentation. It factors in business context from the tags again, in the recommendations that it makes. And so the score is unique to the risk posture of what is being protected, or the risk profile of what is being protected, excuse me. And so a unique feature of VCF there, with a key outcome of enabling a continuous zero trust architecture. And finally, something we don't really talk about very often in the context of security, but there's a hidden security outcome with the use of VCF's pre-engineered application development platform, Tanzu platform, which means actually you can eliminate around 40 DIY open source tools from your environment. So instead of building your own app platform using an array of components that you then have to manage and patch, you can buy a finished product for your developer to build and run resilient container apps securely using what is actually a very highly intuitive platform running on top of VCF. So I like to think of that as making security easy for developers and platform engineers. Moving on to the detect function. So this is all about detecting misconfigurations, firstly, and then threats to the environment. So inside the core of VCF, we have capabilities to detect unexpected traffic flows. So we mentioned earlier about network baselines. We also can perform configuration drift detection, another area that they're investing heavily in. I also highly recommend looking into the new desired state modern infrastructure that we have as part of what we call the supervisor cluster and the supervisor services. This uses a K8 decorative control plane to maintain desired state configuration, not just for containers, but also for VMs. So applying that modern decorative model to virtual machines. And so whilst this feature, clearly is targeted at the modernization agenda, it has an inherent security outcome in terms of avoiding config drift and tech debt associated with long-lived infrastructure resources. And we also have some best-in-class security, as we see in the URL there at the top. We got some awards earlier in the year with vDefend. We can detect threats in the 80% of traffic flows that are missed in traditional security architectures that, in olden days would focus more on north and south traffic. And you may have seen requirements in recent versions of PCI DSS and Swift CSCF to focus more on the east-west traffic. And the advantage we have with VCF and vDefend here is that the detection sensors are actually built into the kernel. So no agents are required and no hairpinning of traffic to off-platform analytics services. And that means a real performance and visibility gain. In terms of a journey with vDefend, we typically start with microsegmentation and IDS and IPS, extend into network traffic analytics, which is in multi-hop IDS IPS, so across network segments, and then on to NDR with more advanced features like guest malware introspection, complementing your EDR tooling, sandbox analysis, and multi-threat correlation. And finally, for me, we don't talk about this enough with customers, but included in RV, the modern software-defined load balancer, we have a very powerful web application firewall to detect and block threats to web apps and APIs. And I've not put it there, but again, we've won some awards in that space recently with RV. And moving on to respond and recover, in terms of responding to threats and disruption events, again, we have some industry-leading capabilities natively built into VCF. So firstly, this is something I've witnessed firsthand when I've been working on the customer side, is how capabilities within VCF combine to help with zero-day vulnerability response. So whilst, with the security tools we have with vDefend, we can do obvious things like virtual network patching, blocking firewall ports, etc. There's also capabilities inside VCF operations which can be used to quickly discover vulnerable services, processes running on workloads, so that they can be identified and remediated. And also, we've seen the use of vMotion to quickly vacate vulnerable servers that require critical firmware updates. So the recommendation here really, if not done so already, is to leverage those useful features inside VCF as part of your zero-day response plans. Moving on to the response side of NDR, we're investing heavily in AI-enabled features, such as alert correlation into campaigns, guided remediation, and things like that. And they're all designed to significantly reduce effort and alert fatigue on the SOC and on the supporting team within your VMware teams. And so ultimately, the intent here is to lead a faster mean time to containment and recovery from identified threats. And for recovery, VCF's cloud-based ransomware recovery solution, we have a means to stand up an isolated recovery environment and service your business critical workloads in the event of a ransomware attack, all in the public cloud. And a unique feature here is that to validate the integrity of the recovery of data, we actually perform live behavioral analysis of powered-on workloads before removing them from network isolation. And that's using inbuilt next-gen AV and EDR capabilities. And what that means is we can detect those fileless attacks that similar solutions that through backup vendors, for example, simply cannot, because they're not powering on the workloads in the same way. And then for traditional DR, we have a low RPO for vSphere async replication. We have policy-driven failover automation and non-disruptive DR failover testing in support of compliance efforts. There's a lot to go into there, and we don't have time to do it justice today, but there's some links that you can follow after the webinar. And then we go on to govern. And this is the final function in NIST, and it was introduced last year as part of version 2 of the CSF. When you look at the requirements and examples NIST provide for govern, there are some dots that we can join to both the modernization of VCF as private cloud and alignment to what we see in many large FSIs where we're focusing on IT operating model modernization. So things like applying principles from SAFe or Scaled Agile framework, such as platform as product, the core tenet of partnering and collaborating closely with the broader business when you manage your environment as a product. That means partnering closer with risk, resilience, and cyber teams too. I really see that as a means of facilitating closer alignment with how the private cloud evolves to your organization's strategies. And remember, this is no longer just vSphere. With the VCF private cloud, there are many areas of your organization that can benefit and make use of VMware technology. So borrowing the most effective practices from public cloud adoption, we can see that by championing the relevant capabilities of private cloud, we can actually build awareness in teams outside of infra and ops, and we can maximize the use of native capabilities, unlocking that full value of VCF. And by applying service tiering and FinOps practices, another borrow from public cloud capabilities that we're building out in the platform, we can encourage decision making to avoid an expensive one-size-fits-all approach to on-premise security and resilience. Encouraging the right decisions at the point of provisioning infrastructure, so that resilience is targeted where and security is targeted where it's needed, and avoid taking funds away from where they're better spent. And finally, supply chain risk. So from a regulatory perspective, we're seeing a focus on cloud and service provider exit planning, and the portability of VCF and the power of the technologies under the cover that enable that, like HCX, hybrid cloud extension networking, and vMotion. It offers a battle-tested technical solution to that problem space. So I see this as helpful for cloud strategy planning in general, but specifically from an operational compliance perspective, VCF portability provides a useful mitigating solution to what we describe as plausible disruption scenarios. And so that's a term that I borrowed from CPS 230, which is the operational risk standard for FSIs here in Australia. And again, it's about thinking more holistically beyond traditional disaster recovery scenarios that typically thought about, site failure. Okay, so that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the capabilities within VCF. It was quite one way. Are there any questions coming in, Zaki, that you'd like us to answer?
We do have Nick addressing them, so maybe you can continue.
Okay, thank you. All right, so elevating us from the depths of security into the future of modern private cloud. Let's have a quick look at what we're advancing in the VCF platform. So firstly, let's spend a few moments thinking about what we're looking to achieve with VCF 9 and beyond. So a lot of VMware engineering effort is focused on reducing risk, adding and improving to the security-related capabilities that we've just spoken about, and disruption avoidance. So to name a few areas you can expect to see, full stack SSO, compliance automation, certificate management improvements, and further developments of intelligent assist and automations, all in support of SecOps, making life easier to maintain security in the platform. Lowering costs is another big outcome that we're looking to help you achieve. So there's a few big areas to think about here. Typically we think about VMware, we think about data center consolidation, vSphere, vSAN, NSX. But from VCF 9, we're actually delivering a bit of a step change by bringing all those components, as well as ARIA, into a much more unified platform from which you can run VMs, containers, and AI workloads natively. And so whilst we continue to provide further innovations to exploit new hardware advancements across compute, memory, and storage, such as, for example, NVMe memory tiering, which will unlock further consolidation opportunities as you cycle out old hardware and provision new capacity. But we're also offering more cloud-like services out the box, things such as DBaaS, database as a service, cloud networking, VPCs, private AI, and that whole new decorative automation model that I introduced earlier. And we can expect the rebalancing of cloud workloads back to on-premise to also contribute to lower costs as a result of that. And by facilitating on-premise modernization, we expect that customers in our sector in particular will be better placed to meet your strategic transformation and innovation goals sooner, which equates to increased revenue. So you can see there some of the core constructs we're introducing from VCF 9 around tenancy isolation, a single interface for service consumption, a single interface for operations, and breaking down those infrastructure silos with traditional and modern applications on a single platform. And you can see there also across the top the advanced services that natively integrate into VCF. Okay, but it's not just about technology. We think back to the FSI cost challenge that Steve introduced at the start. On average, I think we said 70 to 80% costs were on running the bank and 20 to 30% on change the bank globally across the industry. And if we think about how we traditionally run IT infrastructure on-premise, which we associate with run the bank, and how teams organized in response to the speed and capabilities of cloud, which we can safely assume is where a lot of the change the bank efforts are focused, we can start to imagine the power of combining the best aspects of each operating model. So learning from what works well in public cloud, but not discarding the aspects of on-premise that we've invested in that deliver the outcomes that we need. And so the motivation for VCF and FSI for me really comes down to enabling our customers to do three things. So run the bank more efficiently, respond to the compliance challenge whilst lowering risk for less, and the flexibility to modernize and innovate more quickly in response to market dynamics. And so, Steve, I'm going to hand back to you for your thoughts and the next segment.
So every bank that you're going to talk to cares about this, and they care about it deeply. So one thing I just want to point out on the identify and detect and respond and so forth is that with most of the regulations, there's a time box, and our systems, our software will allow them to respond more quickly. And if they don't respond quickly within the parameters of whatever the particular regulation is, the fines could be pretty substantial. So I think everybody needs to understand that. In the example of DORA, for example, non-compliance for DORA could mean 2% of your annual revenue. There are a lot of other penalties that there could be. So I think it's really important to really understand this deeply, because this is the one thing they care about almost more than anything else. Back to the positive outcomes, though, the cost control, the security, the resilience, These are extremely important to reduce the costs of run the bank. They really need to take those dollars and apply that to the automation, scalability, and agility to building those new applications so that they can increase their market share, build those applications that they're looking to build, and most of which are in the space of AI. Next slide, please. So when we talk about AI in financial services and insurance, you'll see colored in the top there is those are the primary use cases that we see for AI. So risk assessment, fraud detection, I think we've covered that pretty extensively. But customer service and personalization, that's high on the list. This is both internal and external in terms of your internal customers, and really where they're testing it out is with the internal customers, meaning the employees, and then if it works well, deploying it externally. Then trading and investment, allowing the portfolio managers to have real-time data to make better decisions and predictive decisions. So, and this is important to them because it is at the end of the day a very competitive environment. If they're getting better returns, more people will flock to their business. We've already covered regulatory compliance, credit scoring and lending. Some examples that we've discussed recently is people are trying to acquire a home, make an offer on a home. They want to be able to do this right from their phone, go to the home that they're interested in. The application knows where they are. It knows the value of that home. It knows the credit score of the person standing in front of it, and theoretically can help them make an offer real time, and also add on services like insurance. So because it's going to be a requirement, especially if they have PMI. So really getting ahead of what the customers are asking for. And then down below with all these major banks that are customers, just pointing out that all of them are hiring at rates we haven't seen. Just in JP Morgan Chase, about 2,300 people have been hired in the last 9 months. They have many applications that they're working on, many use cases they're working on, but the message is very clear that they understand where the world is going. And as a result, Bank of America, they're applying for patents in AI, trying to hire people. The hiring went up in the last 6 months, 13% across all of these banks. Schwab, again, looking at ways to create those intelligent portfolios, both for internal portfolio managers, but for customers, right? If you are able to provide AI in investing, and word gets around that you're getting better returns, you're going to watch people flock to those companies. BlackRock, again, I've listed some of the names of their AI systems that are customer focused, but Wells Fargo is also hiring lots of people, and have over 200 AI machine learning projects they're working on. I think it couldn't be understated, though, that all the patents that are being applied for at this point. So they're really chasing the big players, and these big players are investing in AI, the people, the technology, and so forth. So if we can enable that with VCF, that's a big win. We're also compliant. It makes it a very easy decision. Next slide, please.
Okay, yeah. So a quick introduction to VCF Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA. So to set the scene here, we think about the enterprise challenges that we see in the industry in the context of AI. So firstly, pace of community-led development. There's so much choice. What AI stack do we choose? What tooling, what model do you invest in or commit to? We see cost blowouts and challenges constraining innovation, increasing concerns, not just about the privacy of data and IP through the rise of uncontrolled or shadow AI, but also the growing AI attack surface and concerns around the effect of data model poisoning. So we're starting to think about how do we validate the chain of control and transparency of a completed model? Who has that access to it? And so the benefits of VCF as an AI platform is that it solves a number of those enterprise challenges. You control costs with the efficient use of GPU resources through pooling and virtualization. Data stays on your network with VCF advanced security wrapped around it, which solves for privacy concerns. And for choice, we're actually not locking you into a vertical AI stack. VCF is really a flexible infrastructure layer that lets you run the models and tools that you choose. Because in reality, what you will find most useful in the Gen AI space, struggle to say that, has probably not even been created yet. And so we're also seeing a rise in hybrid cloud demand as well in the context of AI. So with data sources and tools in different locations, be it public cloud or on-premise. To help solve for this one, we're working with Microsoft at the moment to make it easy for organizations to maintain a common Azure entry point for developers and data scientists to plan their ML services while being able to deploy the models and manage the models on VCF anywhere they do business. And so I think for me, the summary takeaway for VCF PAIF, or PAIF-N, as we abbreviate it to, is that it's a flexible open infrastructure layer to run the models of the future. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay, so moving quickly on to the case studies. So firstly, Taishin Bank. So they've had a lot of success with modernization away from legacy hardware and legacy apps through an app modernization program onto VCF. They've enhanced their DR and resilience capabilities through a multi-cloud DR strategy, taking advantage of the live recovery solution that we were talking about earlier, alongside the software-defined load balancing that they get with RV. That's all in the interest of maintaining service continuity and availability. But what really resonates for me with Taishin is that they've also seen an uplift in skills as they modernize their culture and talent using VCF. So by using VCF as a modernization target, and as we introduce more of the modern cloud practices and tools, into VCF, we expect that the benefits to your talent pool will just mount up. Okay. And Steve, over to you for credit union.
Yeah, so the United States Senate Federal Credit Union has some high-profile customers, and Mark Fournier, the CIO there, has his hands full, and thankfully he's been a proponent of our products. He's been a supporter. He's appeared at our events and understands that our private AI solution is as secure as it can be. And he's always going to pick, again, like most banks, and all the requirements that they have for security and compliance are going to steer towards VCF. And he's done that in this case. And they're trying to build new applications, again, that are more customer focused and utilizing real-time data, but doing it in a secure way.
Okay. All right. So quick time for call to action followed by Q&A. So firstly, learn more. We have Explore in Vegas, but this year we also have Explore on Tour. And in APJ, Explore on Tour will be free of charge. So we've got a few locations there, Mumbai, Sydney, and Tokyo. And there'll be things like free training, deep dives. So please look out for the key announcements around those dates. For VCF 9, we encourage you to conduct a proof of value to validate VCF 9 versus the others in the market. But to unlock the value of VCF, remember, it's not just virtualization. It's certainly the best virtualization in the market, but think about the full VCF stack, the unified private cloud platform. You should be able to identify alignment with some real strategic use cases in your organization. And also keep in touch. So there will be a lot of announcements. And for this region, I'll be filtering out and posting those that are most relevant for you as our FSI customer base. So please add me or follow on LinkedIn, and I'll make sure that you get that. And finally, since the acquisition of VMware, Broadcom ourselves, we've been heavily adopting VCF. There's a link there. Again, it will be shared afterwards. But this case study really is worth reading. And there's a couple of comments and videos from Alan Davies, our CIO, presenting the value that VCF has provided already. Okay, so time for Q&A, I think, if there's any left unanswered.
Yeah, we do have a couple of Q&As, in fact, quite a lot. So I'll start
Okay.
with the first one. So first one is, how can one identify zero-day activities in daily operations? How to know residual persistent threat inside environment?
So a couple of things there. So identifying the 0 day. So in area operations or VCF operations, as we're moving towards in terms of the naming, you can use there's a process discovery that you can use via either VM tools or the Telegraph agent to identify services running in the environment. So say there's a 0 day, you need to discover which workloads have got a particular configuration item or software component running. It's an easy way to go and find that across your environment. In terms of responding to APT and lateral threats, that's basically where NDR comes in. So with the vDefend capabilities, we've got some advanced behavioral analytics, which combines with threat intelligence and so forth, which basically is intended to do just that. And then obviously the microsegmentation strategy is designed to prevent those threat actors from moving laterally across your environment.
Okay, the second one is how data confidentiality will be maintained using cloud operation models.
I think that's the point. That's the whole point of VCF as a private cloud. So the cloud operating model is not necessarily a destination. It's a way of working. And what we're doing with VCF private cloud is bringing that way of working on premise in a way that you can maintain your security and your control of your data.
We have another one. Would it be better if central banks or group of banks build cloud infrastructure set up for other organizations to get advantage of technology, or better and quick operations using AI?
It's a valid point in terms of what we're really describing there is a sovereign community cloud, which VCF could be used for, but it requires the collaboration and will of those central banks and industry bodies to do such a thing.
Yeah, and I would say that they already do quite a bit of communicating and setting standards already today. But they do want to stay separate and make sure that they're ensuring that they have the special sauce a little more than their competitors. But they do work together today, and it's hard to do that at a central bank level, given the different countries and regions that you would have to respond to.
Okay. The other question is, besides NVIDIA, any other technology, example AMD, etc., being supported for AI and graphical applications?
Yeah, we'll send a link out after the webinar. But yeah, there's more to it than that in terms of the capabilities. And I think some of the modern chipsets, there's some real grunt that you can get out of those from an inferencing perspective in particular. So yeah.
There are a couple of questions on the chat, so I'll just read it out. Is there support for automated compliance audits, example CIS, benchmarks, NIST within VMware ecosystem?
Yeah, there already is. So if you refer to the compliance baselines, then you'll be able to see that. And I believe in the VCF operations tool, there's a growing list of compliance baseline checks that you can do in VCF operations, and maybe Nick can clarify that one on chat if he's not already.
He's already done that. I think that's all. There's another question which is okay. So somebody's telling thank you. So any other questions which we can take, we'll be happy to take the questions live. We did have a couple of questions at the beginning. Maybe if you want to answer it live, how can one detect a suspectable change configuration in bundle of allowed configuration changes for better security controls?
That's an interesting one. Yeah.
Do you want me to read it out again?
Yeah, read out again, or can I see it written down somewhere?
How can one detect suspectable change configuration in bundle of allowed configuration changes for better security control?
Yeah, I'm going to take that one on notice. I don't fully understand the question, but yeah, we have mechanisms to validate against policy. So you set your governance policy from a network perspective. If there's unexpected ports being open, for example, or traffic flows that you weren't expecting to see or that are misaligned with the policy, then we can trigger a workflow to correct that, or to trigger off an alert. And then, yeah, we have config policies, within the platform, within vSphere as well. So there's quite a lot to it. I don't fully understand the question, but I'll take a look at it after the webinar and dig out the appropriate link.
I think that's all the questions we had. If none other, then we are actually before time. Okay, there are a couple of questions. NIST would be better or CIS if adopted for security controls?
Yeah, I mean, pass on that one. I mean, there's a mapping actually on the NIST website. They have a mapping between the two. There's a close alignment. CIS may be a little bit more prescriptive versus CSF, but then you've got the big government framework that they use over in the US, the 800 series, which also has quite some detailed guidance. So I'm a fan of both of them, to be honest. They're good.
Okay, there's so how VCF enable customers who want to have a private cloud and want hybrid cloud capabilities for AI workloads that are more feasible on cloud space?
I guess the feasibility question might relate to where the data is residing potentially, but that's where the VCF private cloud construct can reside in the public cloud as well. So achieving that data adjacency is achievable. And then I mentioned earlier about the stuff we're doing with Microsoft, about the ability to basically push models from Azure into VCF wherever it's located. So what we try and do is, from a private cloud point of view, there's going to be a set of really core cloud services that we enable on private cloud, and then there will be nuances and things that you might want to choose public cloud for, and our job is to make that easy, and we do so with the adjacency we can achieve by putting VCF into public cloud.
Okay. Any more questions? If you want to type it out. I think we are almost near towards the end. So thank you everyone for joining. Please do take the survey before you drop off. Your feedback is valuable, and we will see you again in our next webinar series, which is going to be very shortly announced. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.